Hi, everyone. Thank you for logging into this video today for this presentation regarding motor development, particularly fine motor and gross motor development in preschoolers. So my name is Ashley Drover. I am an occupational therapist with KidsAbility. My background is a Bachelor of Science in Kinesiology degree from Memorial University in Newfoundland, Canada, and then followed by my Master's of Science in Occupational Therapy from Glasgow Caledonian University in Scotland. I've been in Grand Cayman for 1.5 years now, and I am loving it. It's been great working with all the kids on island, and I'm excited to share how we can be looking at motor development and recognizing concerns and how to work with this. So what we will be reviewing today is first review some concepts of motor development and the definitions and the progression of motor development. Then we will take a brief look at some developmental milestones and how to recognize concerns with developmental milestones. Then if we were in person together, we would have a bit of a movement activity break. But instead, I'll just kind of review the idea of those activities with you through video. And then lastly, we will wrap up by things that we could be doing in the classroom or at home to be helping kids' motor development appropriately. So just the disclaimer here, this presentation is not intended to offer medical advice and should not be relied upon as a substitute for professional consultation with a qualified healthcare professional familiar with your individual medical needs or the child's medical needs. So, big topic, what is motor development? So motor development means the physical growth and strengthening of a child's bones, muscles, and ability to move and touch their surroundings and attain new motor skills. So motor skills are the skills that enable the movements to complete everyday tasks. So we typically break down these motor skills into two major areas, being gross motor skills and fine motor skills, which we'll talk about a little bit later. But the way that the body develops has two common principles. So we have the cephalocaudal principle, which describes the general pattern of physical and motor development following from infancy into toddlerhood and even early childhood, whereby development follows a head-to-toe progression. So this is where the greatest development takes place at the top of the body first or earlier in life, and then gradually moves downward. So moving from the head, down to the trunk, then the neck, then the shoulders, and so on. And then we have another developmental principle being the proximodistal principle that states that development proceeds from the center of the body outwards. So with this principle, the trunk of the body grows before the extremities of the arms and legs, and our development of our functions begin within the trunk and then move from the trunk out to the tips of our fingers and the bottom of our toes. So the classic example is a child learning to move her shoulders before learning to control a pencil. So, they can swing their arms around, but they're not yet handling their fingers accurately. But it is important to know that not every child develops the same, as development depends on maturation and learning, but it does tend to proceed from these simple to more complex skills and is a continuous process throughout childhood and into adulthood. So as mentioned before, we can break our motor skills into gross motor skills and fine motor skills. So our gross motor skills are the abilities that let us to do tasks that involve the large muscle groups, such as the muscles in our torso, legs, and arms. They involve whole body movements that we use for all sorts of physical activities, from running to jumping. And most people use these skills easily and automatically, whereas other people might have some more difficulty and need to have intervention in these areas. So there's lots of different components that make up gross motor skills, some of them being muscle tone. So muscle tone is the tension present in our muscles of the body, which enables us to assume positions against gravity. And this gives us a base for accurate movements and is necessary for most motor actions we make. And this typically, again, develops from the body outwards to the limbs. Next, to be successful in our gross motor skills, we need to be considering balance. So balance is the adjustments that the body automatically makes in order to help one remain upright and not fall down. This allows a child to maintain balance while static or dynamic, so while they're sitting in their chair or while they're moving, say they drop their crayon on the floor. So their ability to reach off the chair, get that crayon, and then come back to sitting. Another component to our gross motor skills that we often see as a concern here in clinic and can be worked on is our bilateral integration. So bilateral integration forms from the two halves of the brain communicating with each other. This allows the two halves of the body to move together or separately. And we need this integration to allow for the development of eye, hand, and foot dominance. And then we have motor planning. So the motor planning is the ability to see something, want to do it, and be able to do it. So it's the ability to learn how to execute a new skill or movement, and our ability to use previous experiences of movement to learn how to complete a new movement. It develops from the child has an idea. I want to do that. I want to go on the big trampoline for the first time. They make a plan on how they want to do that movement. So maybe they remember jumping on a smaller trampoline, or maybe they just recall on jumping, climbing, how to get on the trampoline. So they use all those past experiences to come up with a new motor plan and then hopefully execute the plan accurately. And then lastly here we have crossing midline. So this refers to the ability of a child's arm or foot crossing over the midline of the body. So if there's something on your left-hand side, being able to reach with your right hand to obtain that object. Or for an example of the foot, when you're standing, if you have a bike with a kickstand down, you need to use your foot and kind of move it across to the other side of your body to either put it down or kick it up. So this is not something that happens automatically, so we need to work on this area sometimes. We might see as an area of concern that a child is writing or doing something with their right hand. The crayon is on the left side of the body, then they use their left hand to reach for that crayon instead of reaching across the body to retrieve it. So we need all of these pieces to work together, not just because gross motor skills are important for our physical fitness and sports, but because we need these skills to progress into other areas of development later in life. So fine motor skills is the second component to our motor skills, and it is the coordination of small muscles in movement with the eyes, hands, and fingers. So the complex levels of manual dexterity that humans exhibit can be related to the nervous system and allows for the growth and intelligence to develop continuously throughout the stages of human development. So fine motor skills is not just your writing skills. It impacts our development in academics. It impacts our play for activities such as puzzles and Legos, and also is essential to a person's ability to attend to their own personal and self-care, such as dressing, tying up their shoelaces, zippers, buttons, belts, etc. So areas of development like bilateral coordination are pinch and grip strength, separation of different sides of the hand. There's so many different pieces that go into fine motor skills, as we can see here. So there are lots of components of fine motor skills. So when we get a referral that says difficulty with handwriting, which is a common one, we know that it's more than handwriting, and there's probably subcomponents here that we need to work on more than just putting pencil to paper. So there's tons of components of fine motor skills. For the sake of time today, we will stick with these bolded ones when it comes to suggestions and recommendations, but a lot of these all work together. So when we're working in one area, such as say tripod grasp, we actually could also be working on wrist extension as well. So there's lots of activities that would target many of these areas, but I want to help us today understand how we can be specifically targeting the right area if we are aware through consultation with the healthcare provider that this is the skill a child should be working on. So although every child is unique, generally our development progression occurs in a predictable pattern. So as reviewed in yesterday's presentation, the sensory system is first to integrate itself. Then this is followed by gross motor skills, many of which is often mastered before smaller movements such as fine motor skills. And then we progress into the ability to complete our self-care. And then we gain life skills. So our ability to, put a key in a door, all these things kind of work together. So to break it down even more, gross motor skills can be grouped into differing areas. So the three that we are going to focus on today is locomotion, balance, and object control. So locomotor skills allow us to move our body through different environments and moving from one space to another. As mentioned, balance is the ability to maintain a controlled body position during task performance, whether standing still or moving. And then object control, this is our movement skills that require an ability to handle an object or piece of an equipment with control. So this is our things like our ball skills, mostly like sports, or just being able to, toss a candy bar to a friend. So it's our ability to propulse and recept items. And we also have our fine motor skills, which we're going to focus on our coordination, grasp, and strengthening, but there are many, many. So progression of development. So there are many, many milestones. I am just going to review some of the CDC's fine and gross motor milestones from their checklist. There are different checklists out there. There's different options that you can look at, which I have in resources at the end of this presentation. So by no means is this the only progression of development milestones, but it is a good resource for us to just be checking in with the kids around us. So by 6 months of age, we would want to be seeing a baby rolling over from their stomach to their back. They should be pushing up with straight arms while on their tummy and leaning on hands for support in sitting. Then 3 months later, by 9 months, we are looking for the baby to assume a sitting position by themselves, move things from one hand to the other, use their fingers to rake their food towards them, and sit without support. Then by 1 year, we are hoping the baby is pulling themselves up to a standing position, trying to walk, holding onto furniture, picking things up between their thumb and pointer fingers. And then by 3 months later, they should be taking a few steps on their own at 15 months and using fingers to feed themselves food. Then 3 months later, by 18 months, baby should be walking without holding on to anyone or anything, scribbling, using a crayon, trying to use a spoon, and climbing on and off a chair or couch without help, which can be scary, but we wanted them to be exploring those environments. By 2 years old, we should be seeing the child kicking a ball, running, walking up a few stairs with or without help, and by this time eating with a spoon. Then by 2.5 years old, we should be seeing them trying to use their hands to twist things like door knobs or lids. They should be taking some clothes off, jumping off the ground with both feet, and turning thick book pages one at a time. Then by 3 years, drawing a circle when shown, stringing items together like large beads or macaroni, putting on some clothes, and using a fork. By our 4th birthday, we are hoping that the child is catching a large ball most of the time, serving themselves food, being able to pour their own water, on buttons, some buttons, and holding a crayon or pencil between the fingers and the thumb. By 5 years, we should be seeing the child hopping on one foot and writing some, if not all, letters in their name. And then by 6, dressing themselves, tying or attempting to tie their shoes, and catching a ball easily with only their hands. This means that they can catch the ball without bringing it towards the body. So if those things aren't occurring, we might be having some concerns. So what do we do when we have those concerns? So we want to make an appointment with your family doctor or another healthcare provider. We could be using the milestone checklist. So there's one available on pathways.org. There's one available through the CDC. We have different versions here in the clinic. So we want to be using that checklist or reaching out to have somebody else review those concerns through a checklist for you. Ask about developmental screening, so looking at assessments and acting early. So don't wait. If your baby or child is not meeting one or more milestones, has lost skills he or she once had, or you have any other concerns, we want to act early so we can continue their development throughout those other areas of life. So here, if we were all together today, we would take a bit of a break. But I will kind of review each of these stations that we would be going and trying. So first would be our coloring station. So I would have everyone trying different size coloring utensils and different shapes and seeing how they feel. So the lesson here that I want to get across is that people might have different preferences. So, this might be too heavy. This one might feel awkward because it's triangular. This one's probably too small. So we want to be considering the child before we're giving them just some crayons, especially if they're having difficulty in those areas. So we can let them try a couple. Which one do they feel best with? We don't want a big heavy crayon if they're struggling with hand strength, but maybe they have difficulty with positional awareness and they need that extra weight so that it can give them feedback in their coloring activities. So that would be one of our stations. Next, we would have a sitting station where we would have different size chairs available at the table and asking them to write their name and seeing how that feels. So if I'm sitting comfortably at my desk right now, I can write my name with my shoulder in good neutral positioning. However, if I bring myself down and my shoulder needs to be raised to write like this, and I don't have good shoulder stability, I don't have good strength in my upper arm, then that's going to impact my writing experience. And we don't want that to be part of the experience for our children. So making sure that we have appropriate table and chair heights and that they're able to maintain a neutral shoulder positioning with writing is important so that we are giving them the best chance of developing the skills that we are targeting. Next would be balance. So here we would have a number of items out in the room just to show that, you can try to stand on one foot for 10 seconds, and that's great. That works on balance. That's a good activity for kids. However, it can be quite boring. So we could make this more fun by having stepping stones or having, we have a large tire here, an inflatable tire that they can stand on and need to correct their balance, or a wobble board. So the idea here is just to try different things, see which one you like the most or which one you found to be the most fun, and then seeing that through the lens of a child as well, that they don't want to just stand on one leg. They want to be having fun. They want to be doing other things, but we can also still be working on balance. And then our last station would be our scissors station. So we would have different size scissors. We all have our typical adult scissors that we are comfortable with. However, a child is not going to want to use these. I don't want to use these. My hand does not really fit well in them. They're kind of sticky because the kids probably got glue on them. But these would probably be more comfortable to a child, but they might be too restrictive. So then we have other options where we have spring-loaded scissors where they don't need to be opening the scissors themselves. They just need to cut and then they open. So just looking at the different options, what are we working on? So is a child having difficulty with their hand strength and can't make this strength, or they have difficulty with opposition and they have difficulty bringing the thumb and the fingers together, where this one, we can kind of have more of a gross grasp and squeeze down and be able to cut if we are working on the basic levels of those scissor skills. So that would be our movement break if in person. So then we'll move on to how can you help? So really we just want to let kids do what kids want to do. So going to a park, letting them drink and eat messy when it's appropriate, letting them jump in puddles, trying multisensory drawings and activities. So using shaving cream and chalk and then crayons. So of course, like all the things that we do in childcare settings, is benefiting some type of skill. There's some type of skill identified. But I hope today that using our developmental checklist or through communication with parents and care providers, that we can become more aware that there are underlying specific components to the challenges a child might be facing or not meeting their developmental milestone. So what I want to do is get into some of the specific activities we could be doing if we know this area needs to be targeted. So locomotion, our first kind of subcategory through gross motor skills. So if we are having a child in preschool or at home, and we have been speaking to the healthcare provider or OT, and we're saying, okay, we really need to work on our locomotor skills or gait skills, or even our motor planning. These are some of the activities that we could be doing. So stop and go games, learning how to reduce our speed, stop, initiate that movement again, having them jump onto soft surfaces. So if the child's having difficulty with jumping, then giving them that soft surface to fall into to make it a little more fun and a little less scary of falling with jumping. Follow the leader is great activities. It incorporates their visual processing with their ability to make a body plan and how to complete that motion. All the better if they have not done it before, because then they need to work on that motor planning piece as well as their locomotion skills. Simon Says, great game. Just letting them figure out then, opposite from follow the leader where they would watch you. Simon Says we would tell them a movement and then they need to use that auditory input to create a motor output. Trampolines are great for locomotion, getting comfortable with the movement of jumping before maybe jumping on off of things or jumping on solid grounds. If a child's having difficulty with skipping, adding a song in so that they're able to develop that cadence and rhythm. And then our animal walks. We all love animal walks here at KidsAbility in the occupational therapy department. So we have bear walks, penguin walks, crab walks. There's so many more online, and kids really like these. And we could always kind of make it into a game. So go pick a teddy bear or a toy or figurine. How do they walk? And then getting them all to try that. So it's about working on these skills without just practicing, let's go for a walk, or let's jump from one spot to another. Some other ones, walking between taped lines or making wavy lines and courses with chalk, stepping over items, stomping in puddles. So those would be some specific activities we would complete, suggest, and recommend if we are working on a child's locomotion skills. For our balance, again, we don't want to stand on one leg. It's not that fun. So scootering, tricycles, and bicycles, all those things are great. If we can get a kid on there and they're able to complete them safely, this is a great way to be working on our balance while the child is having fun. Next, pillow walk. So just walking on different surfaces. So having different size, big squishy pillows on the ground and then walking across them. We have to be automatically correcting our position. So that's going to be working on our balance as well. Stepping stones. So having little items around they have to step between, floors, lava type activities. Kids yoga. I know a lot of the schools here offer yoga to children, which is great. But if not, or if that kid needs a little bit of extra work in balance, then maybe including that a little more in their day. Elevated walking, which we like to say, get off that. But it is good to be, giving them some of the free time to explore. So walking across the couch, walking across the coffee table, as long as it is safe, but allowing them to walk at an elevated height to get that sense of gravitational security. Sitting on yoga balls, great for our balance, great for our core strength. Balance boards, if you have them, you can always make ones. So yeah, getting that wobbling motion and being able to correct that postural position against gravity. And then foot props, this one can be quite fun. So if we have little cones, you could be putting different items on there where the child has to, step on it or kick it off. So that's giving them that one single leg stance for short periods of time and turning it into a bit more of a game. So object control. So there's lots of things we can do for object control. Mostly what I want to go through here is that there tends to be a general progression in our skills with object control. And it's not always this way, but we want to be looking that if the child's having difficulty maybe catching a ball, to be taking a step back and achieving the prior level of object control skills. So first, the child should be able to underarm roll a ball, then underarm throw a ball, and then overarm throw a ball. So if a child is having difficulty with overarm throwing, we might want to look at the 2 stages before that and ensure that they're completing those successfully. And if not, then working on those skills specifically. After we're overarm throwing, we should be able to 2-hand throw and then catch. So most kids can throw a ball before they can catch the ball. So we want to get those catching skills intact, and then work on, the throwing skills intact, and then work on our catching skills. And then next we come kicking. And again, this kind of follows that top to bottom development. However, this is not always the case. Depends on culture and what they've been involved in. I see a lot of kids that come into the clinic and have really, really good kicking skills from playing football, but then can't catch the ball. So each child is different, but generally we would see this progression. And then once they're kicking the ball, they'll start kind of dribbling with their foot, so controlling the ball with their feet. Then lead into overarm striking, like we would see in volleyball, 2-handed sidearm striking, like we would see in baseball. And then we move into our bouncing skills, so being able to stand positionary, dribbling or bouncing with 2 hands, then moving into dribbling with 1 hand, and then dribbling with long implements, so being able to run while dribbling a ball. So those are the stages we would look at. So if we see that, a child is really struggling with making contact between like a baseball bat and a ball, we might want to take a couple steps back, work on those skills, and then progress up into working on that specific skill. And now we're going to fine motor activities. So as I mentioned, a lot of these activities are working on multiple different areas of fine motor skills, but these ones are just specifically to some of the areas I wanted to highlight that we see as areas of concern here in clinic. So the first one being bilateral hand coordination. So this is the ability to use both hands together, or using 1 hand as a stabilizer and 1 hand as a manipulating hand. So some activities that we could do here would be like the lacing cards we see, where we have to weave in and out and hold the card with 1 hand, or bracelet making, where we have to be using both hands consistently, not tying. Another one would be stencils and tracing. I love this activity because the result actually does depend on how well you're able to stabilize with that 1 hand. So I do a lot of tracing with the kids, and they seem to like it. Peeling stickers, the ability to hold, kind of put the appropriate amount of pressure onto the base of the sticker and then peel the sticker off. And then threading, so threading macaroni or beads, anything we want. So without good bilateral hand coordination, a child might appear clumsy or drop items, or use primarily 1 hand in an activity, or switch hands during the task and not use them together. And this is an important area. So development of bilateral hand coordination skills is powerful in functional skills like self-feeding, handwriting, self-dressing, grooming, and more. So when we work on these things, it's not, again, just the ability to tie a knot. It's the ability to engage in our day-to-day activities in the future. So our next area that we need to be looking at and that we often work on in clinic is our grasp. So we have our gross grasp, tripod grasp, pincer grasp, and our open thumb web space. So gross grasp is used when squeezing all of the fingers shut around an object, like when holding the handle of a suitcase. So gross grasp is important in tasks like handwriting and scissor use. And to do these activities, you need to squeeze your whole hand and shut and maintain endurance to complete the activity. So some things that we could do for fun with the kids is using squeeze water bottles, using the hole punchers, and bringing out sponges. So all those activities are going to give us that close gross grasp. Then for pincer grasp refers to the pad-to-pad grip needed to pick up small bead-sized objects. And it's important for many fine motor activities and functional skills, such as just holding items between the thumb and the index finger, like the zipper on our pants. So things that we could be doing to work with that is picking up small items, so Cheerios, Fruit Loops, all those little tiny foods, encouraging them to pick them up one at a time. Tweezers are a good activity where they could be transferring items using tweezers, where they would use the two fingers, or items where they're pulling off tape. So when we hold onto our tape, we're using these two fingers. So we would want to encourage activities like that. Maybe it's part of like a bigger art craft or a game to be supporting their pincer grasp development. And then tripod grasp. Tripod grasp is the opposition of the thumb to the pad of the finger, the pointer finger and middle finger when grasping and manipulating objects. This is the optimal but not only option for holding a pencil. There are other functional holds. However, we do try to teach children the tripod grasp of pencil or crayon. So things that we can do with that, putty play. So we make a little game, so this is our crocodile and he needs to eat the Play-Doh, or just making little pinches or squeezing the worm for tripod grasp, or placing items into a surface. So using toothpicks to squeeze it into the to place it into the putty, or pipe cleaners to put it into the putty, styrofoam. So just placing objects into another object. And then lastly, we have the open thumb web space. So the thumb web space is that space between your thumb and pointer finger that makes an O when you make the OK sign. So in order to grasp small items with your thumb and index finger, you need to be able to oppose the tip of your thumb, it's hard to say, to the tip of your pointer finger. So not only do the tip of the fingers need to touch, but the thumb must rotate at the joint closest to your hand. So we're not just looking at closing it, it's opening it. So we need the skill to be able to kind of tie our shoelaces, being able to do buttons. So some activities are pegboards, like with big pegs. So if we had this kind of thing, placing it in this position, it's going to develop that web space. Rolling dice is quite good for it. And then a fun one is kind of the boop. It's like you boop your pet's nose. So you can do that with teddy bears. How many animals can you see, so that they would have to go and place their finger around the nose of different teddy bears. And then our last kind of area to cover is fine motor strength. So we have functional finger strength and hand strength that's needed for writing and coloring with endurance, and being able to play with items that require fine motor skills for long periods of time. So this also helps us with our ability to open and close plastic baggies, open and close, or get that really tight jar that we can't open. So different activities that we could work on fine motor strength would be putty again. So there's resistance to achieve the desired outcome. You could buy different levels of strength putty. So if they're finding that's easy, we could add different resistance to that. Again, so if we look at this child here, so he's applying pressure here, but he's also working on bilateral coordination in this task. So a lot of these target multiple areas. Crumpling a paper, again, it's working on our gross grasp, but it's also working on fine motor strength. Rubber bands, so placing the rubber bands around a bottle or around a teddy bear, working on that strength. Also working on the pincer grasp. Bubble wrap, so popping bubble wrap. I think everyone loves popping bubble wrap. I never throw away bubble wrap. It's a great activity for developing finger strength in kids, and they quite like it. Using glue bottles instead of glue sticks, so that we're required to squeeze and get resistance there during an art activity, or tearing paper. Again, also really good for that bilateral coordination, using the two hands separately. So those are just some activities that we would encourage if you see that a child is having difficulties in these areas. So if we see, or we talk to a healthcare practitioner, okay, we're really working on their locomotion, their gait. These are some activities that we would go to, and hopefully you can reference back to these if needed. There's lots of resources online. So the OT Toolbox, Imagination Tree, your Therapy Source have some pay for items, but lots of free items available as well. And most of them are grouped up into the different areas I reviewed. So you could go in and go balance activities, and it'll give you games and activities that you could do there. As mentioned, there are multiple resources available for checking off milestones. So there's pathways.org that has a list available. And there's also an app through CDC Milestone Tracker where you can put in the child's age and it will prompt you to some questions and then kind of let you know if you're meeting the milestones or not. So these are just some of the references from today. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. If you have any questions at all, please reach out to KidsAbility. If you have any concerns, we are happy to discuss. That will be it for today. So thank you so much. I hope everyone has a great day.